This is show close to 190. Go. Good morning. Welcome to Vets for Peace television show. We've got an exceptionally interesting guest on a critically important topic. So we hope you stick with us, have a great day, and learn a little bit from what we're going to be presenting to you. My name's David Ross. I'm a graduate of South Burlington High School and the University of Vermont. I volunteered twice. I did 2 tours as a combat medic with the 1st Infantry Division in Vietnam. And from what I've seen, you know, war is simply so horrible. War is, after all, the socially sanctioned, highly organized, technologically enhanced mass killing of human beings to accomplish a goal, that is, to make a profit. In today's day, in this day and age, war has become so barbaric, so brutal to civilians. It's just, you know, there's just no excuse for it. So we really need to end war. And I spent the last 50 years addressing that issue in every way possible. Dave?
Yeah, Dave Ransom, and I basically served a silo, which could have extinguished a lot of people down in New Jersey. And then a camp down there, Camp Kilmer, some of you may remember, where I helped the colonel prepare for what none of us really realized were the refugees. Ever heard that word before? Refugees from Hungary. And Extinction Rebellion, Dan, is just a fascinating term I think the young people have come up with, and I'm all ears. I'm eager to hear about this because I've been wondering about our extinction as a species on this planet Earth for, well, since I was a kid. Nobody wanted to hear my question.
So give us a little background, who you are as a person outside the sphere of Extinction Rebellion. Then give us a little background on Extinction Rebellion as an organization, what your goals are, how you came to be, where you're going. We want to have, you know, before the show ends, maybe not this moment, want people to know how to get in touch with you guys if they want to make a difference. And
I can't resist the pun. I can't resist the pun. We're learning today, in terms of climate change, how to batten down the hatches. Bad, really bad, really bad.
So yes, my name is Dan Batten, down the hatches. I'm actually from Minnesota. Grew up there and was there for about the first 3 decades of my life.
Where?
Grew up in the Twin Cities area, and then went to college up north near Fargo, North Dakota.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'm familiar with Vermont type weather, at least.
on the same latitude?
Same latitude as Burlington, absolutely.
Yeah.
I am not by any stretch an activist organizer. I am a technical writer. I've basically been a desk jockey for 30 years and have enjoyed the work. But I see that we are in a position from a climatic standpoint that we're in danger. Humanity is in danger. Many species other than humanity are already very much on the edge of extinction or have been made extinct. We are losing from 50 to 200 species a day on this planet right now. And so we are in what is being called the 6th mass extinction. And the real question is whether humanity is going to be a participant in that. Well, we're a participant already. Whether we're going to be a result of our actions is the big question. So I last year found out about Extinction Rebellion. It started up in the UK in April of 2018. There was a lot of work prior to April 2018 that was happening in the UK before Extinction Rebellion really was born as a named group. But last fall, they started to do actions primarily in London, shutting down some bridges and basically feeling their oats to see what kind of actions they could do, how they could push law enforcement, see what types of direct action really were effective in getting the message across about the climate crisis. So about a year ago now, I guess it was November, that Extinction Rebellion in the US kicked off. And it was shortly thereafter, somewhere around Thanksgiving, that I signed up because I saw that Extinction Rebellion, and we can talk about this hopefully some more, has really got a different model for approaching climate situation. And that really appealed to me because I didn't feel like the current models were actually doing any good. So I signed up on the Extinction Rebellion Vermont mailing list, which at that time was about 12 people. And they were looking for folks to start organizing groups in the state. And I said, okay, I can do that, I guess, not really knowing what that meant, but I can do that. And so from there, basically, I took a presentation that Extinction Rebellion has. We call it the talk, the XR talk. And we go to certain places. We go to libraries, to schools, to, mostly libraries and schools, and invite people to come.
Churches can
Churches, absolutely. And give the presentation, which is about an hour long, about as long as this show. We talk about the science, and we talk about how Extinction Rebellion plans to address the kind of paralysis that we have among elites and institutions to actually do anything. So pretty much by going from town to town, library to library, we've been trying to spread the message here in Vermont, and this is something that the UK was doing. They've gone to hundreds of cities and towns. It's happening all across the United States now as well. Meeting people face to face. Yes, social media is part of it, but really meeting people face to face and getting to know people and trust them and respect each other. And a face to face is so much different than how you do it over social media. Yeah. So the groups have been building. So we have a Southern Vermont group in Brattleboro. We have an Upper Valley group that kind of spans the Connecticut River a little bit, so it's both Vermont, New Hampshire, a bioregional type of group. We have a Central Vermont group now, pretty much based in Montpelier. We have a Burlington group, and we also have a what we call Champlain Valley group, and that is kind of got Middlebury as the hub and spreading around there as well. So we are continuing to grow in Vermont. It's exciting to see our growth, and folks are getting very excited about upcoming things that we're going to be doing as well. And as the country, the population of the XR community across the country expands as well, you're going to see a lot more things across the country as well. So
something about the arrogance of human beings. We think we're special. We think we have like personal relationships with an individual God who's like a big guy up in the sky with a beard. We're animals. Yeah, we're apex predators. We're the top of the food chain. But the bottom line is we're animals. We reproduce, we nurse our young, we forage our food. Not forage our food. Well, that might mean you go work at the shop and then go to the supermarket. Well, you're still foraging, just like other animals. Just we've got a sort of really highfalutin style that industrialization has made possible. We've only had industrialization for the past 200 years, which is where all this change is coming out of. You look at recent warnings. These mosquitoes that have never been seen in Vermont are coming into Vermont because it's getting warmer. I'm waiting for the alligators. Seriously, as things warm up, things from down south are going to move up because the environment's going to change in their favor. really
Ticks.
pathetic. Watching a polar bear and its cub.
Yeah.
They gave up on everything and they're taking that chance and they're just swimming and swimming to get to the ice. They never got to the ice. They drowned. We are watching species that can never be. Polar bear is going to be extinct unless we have like specimens that we keep in zoos. And once you get down to a certain number of individuals, breeding becomes erratic. All these things that normally don't really tend to show up because they all get concentrated, both good and bad. So we're actually watching the end of entire species. Hundreds of bird species gone just in the last few years. What makes us think we're different? We changed the temperature and the weather patterns enough, we're gone. And that's exactly what we're doing. You know, we've had tremendous gain from industrialization, but oh my God, I think we sort of overpaid the price for it. And now it's turning around and it's threatening us. Because even the best science models for predicting the rate and manifestations of change, they're not working. They're finding all these other things. Now, the methane, which normally is like an ice, it stays in ice down in the bottom of the ocean under pressure. That stuff, where it's warming up, that's being released, and that is 10 times more greenhouse effect per volume than carbon dioxide.
I think it's actually 80 times. It's a huge amount. It's almost incomprehensible. Yeah.
Okay, then I will stand corrected, and I will correct somebody on YouTube.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
80 times.
There's other things. There are diseases which have never been seen by human beings. And guess what is going to come out of those Greenland and other places as the ice melts? You're going to start seeing diseases, some still before you even really had human beings. We have no defense against those. And because of the way people travel, well, that's one of the ways nature takes care of overpopulation is pandemics. Expect in your lifetime to see, a or more than one pandemic. You'll see Ebola and things like that. But you'll see it on a mass basis all over everywhere, and it's going to be a lot worse than the chicken disease stuff that came out of China and so on. We're changing the fundamental nature of how nature fundamentally works, and you can't do that without dire consequences.
I heard a report just recently on the radio. I haven't pursued it, just heard this clip about that in one of our cities, they recorded temperature of 123 degrees. And it apparently lasted for like a 2-hour period, or a short period of time. No, I'm sorry, not the 2-hour period, but it lasted a short period of time. But the commentator also added that the human body can only tolerate that degree temperature for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, there was not overall, but there was a spike in temperature in Europe, and about 70,000 people died from it.
Yep.
70,000 people. I mean, that's that's a couple of months of carpet bombing.
So we are
Wow,
talking
yeah.
about extinction.
That is definitely on the table. It really is. We have put ourselves in a position where it is almost inevitable, even if we stop everything that we're doing right now, we are going to have people suffering at a mass scale. And that will include people dying. Yeah.
We're getting an older population. Bye-bye, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is a definitely a possibility. I personally, this is not Extinction Rebellion talking. I find it incomprehensible to think that we are all going to perish, but I would not be surprised if we lose a lot of people, especially if we continue on the trajectory that we're on.
When the dinosaurs died, what survived were little tiny mammals.
Yeah.
They burrowed in the ground,
Yep.
and they stayed in the ground because they knew that sun was too much. They came out at night and foraged for whatever they could find, including dying and dead dinosaurs. We evolve from those. So, you know, if we're gone, and the polar bears are gone, and the elephants and giraffes and all the rest of it are gone, there probably will be, you know, at the least some viruses and other types of things. They'll survive, and you know, nature and life will find a way. They'll just start evolution all over again.
Hey, Dave, maybe you and I ought to take up spelunking and become cave dwellers.
Well, Cincinnati, Ohio, where I grew up, I spent a lot of time in caves, bottomless pits. I've been to the end of the rope and seen the darkness, and I get the hell back up.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, serious caving.
But what we're talking about is that it seems like not enough people in power, the thing that any individual tries to discover in oneself as one grows up, you know, what are our powers that we have, and it goes through that evolutionary or learning process, if we're fortunate and if we have good peers and good adults to guide us. And it seems like, well, with Veterans for Peace, when we talk about the high cost of military, or the danger of, like, the recent F-35 coming to Burlington, there's no one listening. There's no one in power who is capable of hearing our presentation.
It comes down to greed. How much does someone need to be content? Do you really need a house with 20 bedrooms when you're probably so unpopular nobody come and stay with you anyway?
Yeah.
So, you know, here you've got this long line of old money and a newer line of pop money, mostly like, you know, from the high techs and marketing, and they just want more and more. Their greed, their desire is insatiable. They don't want a $100,000 car. They want $1 million 1930 Bugatti that's been restored like a dentist would do your tooth, every detail. They want it all. Meanwhile, you have kids in Vermont even. They go to bed hungry. They go to bed cold in the winter time.
Absolutely.
How much is enough? I mean, strip the mountains of Kentucky and Tennessee and Virginia. Strip the mountains for coal. Pump every last bit of gas-bearing sludge out of the tar sands. I mean, who's going to remember you in 3 generations anyway, no matter how much or whatever you leave? They won't, like, personally really remember you. You know, you're going to die. Don't take the whole world with you. It's like, you know, I had a friend. He says, one of these days, we're all going to show up at the gated communities and we're just not going to let them out. He said, the people in the military will be in the same situation we are, and they're just going to circle those gated communities with the little surface-to-air missiles, little 1 or 2 guy carryable jobs, portability. Any helicopter that comes in to take them out is going down and joining them. police and military are going to have to decide which side they're on. If it gets bad enough and people start to get hungry enough, I mean, the ultimate case is what happened with the soccer team in the Andes. In the end, they ate their dead because they didn't have a choice. It was eat the frozen dead people or just join them in death. And so they cannibalized. And, you know, I could just see this post-apocalyptic America where someone says, well, we got to go out and get something to eat. Yeah, let's go get a Republican kid. They're well fed and tender. You know, little class prejudice in your shopping list.
Democrats are too.
No, but seriously, when a society gets to a certain point and you start to have a real social collapse, I'm sorry, whatever you learned in any venue, it's everybody for themselves. And you better be hooked into a network, and you better have the right things. And the things that are going to have real value are going to be antibiotics, guns, alcohol, hatchets, hammers, and nails.
And what we're
because
referring
there aren't
to,
going to be any stores opened.
what we're referring to here is the instinct we're born with too. As a child wants to be social, wants to be related, wants to be connected. And it's as that child grows and then may choose greed that the greed can take over. Like the money is not a person or an animal, but we've allowed the money to take over. And where does all this get into? I mean, here we're chatting on about the horror show. We've got the extinction down.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about how the social degradation is already happening around the planet. If you take a look, one case study is Syria. You look at how...
And that was largely environmental because they had a food collapse.
That's where I was going. We had in Syria droughts around 10 years ago now. The droughts began.
Iraq.
Yeah, and so people who were out out of the cities were trying to farm. They could not do that because they had no water. Same thing is happening in Central America. People moved to the cities.
A lot of our refugees are actually climate refugees.
I'm getting there. Yeah.
I'll be quiet.
So,
I read too much. I watch too much.
Yeah, well, it's all interrelated. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So in Syria, people moved to the cities because that was where they could find food. They could not farm anymore. And they moved to the cities. You have, and this is playing out globally, not just in Syria, but people move to the cities. Suddenly you have this explosion of population. People are learning to live with each other. There's other geopolitical things being thrown in the mix as well that I know you guys could speak about. But you get all these people mixed together, and of course you're not going to have the same type of social situation that you had prior to all these newcomers. And like you said, we've got folks coming from Central America because their situations have worsened to the point, and a lot of it is climate related, worsened to the point where they have to leave as well. And where are they going to go? Well, you're going to go to places where you know you can feed your kids, and whether it's Damascus or whether it's the border of the United States or wherever, you're going to go there because you want to stay alive and you want your family to stay alive. And we're going to see a lot more of that. The World Bank, not exactly your most liberal organization in the world, they have estimated hundreds of millions of people are going to be on the move by 2050. I think the UN was projecting recently at least 1 billion. That's 1 in 7 or 8 people on the planet are going to be moving.
Seychelles.
Yeah, some people don't have land to live on anymore.
I mean, they're just watching the ocean come up and into their front door.
That's right.
They're not going to have any place in their home where they can get their feet dry. And they're eventually going to get a wave. and they'll just be washed into the dustbin of history.
Right. And
They
those are
won't
the,
even leave anything for the archaeologists. A few waves will come in, and everything that was ever there for thousands and thousands of years of farming the sea for totally renewable everything that they needed just won't be there.
Right. And those are cases right now where people are leaving. They have to leave forever.
Glaciers in the Himalayas are disappearing. 5 rivers come out of the Himalayas, like in Vietnam, the Mekong River system, India, the Ganges. I mean, you know, entire parts of continents are fed by the water, require the water that comes from these glaciers, and they're disappearing. They're not being renewed, and there's inadequate rainfall to keep them filled. What do you do with half the population of India? What do you do with the people of Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Lower China when that water stops flowing?
Yep.
Ask Uncle Sam for a handout?
Plastic bottles. We get water from Vermont.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern right now. Of course, here we are in Vermont, and our population is actually going down. But that's going to change. That will change. I've moved here with my family a year ago from Virginia, and one of the reasons why we moved here was because we were in central Virginia. We had a little farm there, just some chickens and big gardens. But we could see that over time, our daughter was not going to be able to stay there. In a couple of decades, when she's more than a couple of decades when she's our age. Her life is going to be vastly different if she stayed in Virginia. So we did the calculus a little bit and figured, let's make the move now and come to Vermont, which is a progressive place in our minds compared to Virginia. But let's get our daughter established in Vermont, because sooner or later we're going to have a lot more people coming here because the South is getting too warm. It's going to be too hard to farm. It's going to be too hard to do a lot of things. So I think the population going down in Vermont is probably a short-term thing now. And going forward, we're going to see a lot more people.
Fantasies about, we'll go up to Vermont and we'll just go out in the woods and hunt. The society collapses. You can't imagine how fast the bear, the deer, and anything else edible is going to just be off the table.
No water.
They'll be extinct really fast.
Right.
A lot of the people I know up here, they've got their yard tractor. If they don't have a real tractor, they got their gun, they got their chainsaw, they got their well, they got their chickens, and maybe a couple of pigs or a cow or two. But there's a limit to how self-sustaining you can be without stuff coming in from elsewhere.
Yep.
And a society really does fall apart. There are going to be all these people that have seen these come to Vermont tourist things. Yeah, let's go up there. And the people like me up there are, I like to help people out, but there's a limit. I don't want 30 people coming and saying, can we stay in your house? Forget it. And I don't want to shoot anybody.
You know what?
And I don't know what to do.
Recently there was a newspaper clip or something they were talking about. The tourist season, the leaf peepers, and they were reviving the old story of building the Shenandoah Parkway right up through Vermont. And the article made it sound like maybe this is an idea we need to revisit.
Now, the mountain that's going to run all the way up, the road's going to run all the way up the mountaintops?
Not one word about water or what's happened in Virginia in the Shenandoahs. Not one word. So we have this absence of reflection, absence of leadership, absence of personal power that's getting together with other personal powers to, like the family at the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where Extinction Rebellion is trying to step in and say, we all have power. We have a lot more power than we have been led to believe. That we, look at me, for example. Like I said, I'm a technical writer, sat at a desk and just trying to do a normal life. But it's time to get out of our comfort zones. It's time to explore just how powerful we actually are. And what's really been heartening to me as I've gone around the state is when I've done the Extinction Rebellion presentation, there's a lot of just normal people who have finally said, I'm terrified. I'm terrified for my kids, for my grandkids, for everybody really. And I've been donating a little bit to this group or that group, or I've done a petition, or I've done an email letter to my representative. Nothing seems to happen. And I've gone to a march even. Sometimes people say, I went to that march, I felt real good, and then I went home, and that was it. We have to do more. And everybody is starting to see, even folks who, I'm an introvert. I would much rather be home right now doing something in my backyard or whatever. Yeah. But we have to kind of look at what the situation really is. And we try to call out the science, as you were saying, Dave, about what kind of situation we're in as far as the ecological collapse, the melting of the glaciers, the melting of the ice in the Arctic is really going faster than we predicted, that scientists predicted. So we're in a position where we still have the comforts, but we have to start seeing those comforts.
Small.
Yeah, we have to get out of those zones and put ourselves in a much different position than we probably ever thought we were going to be as we grew older. And we're getting a lot of help from the youth on this. In fact, I shouldn't even say that. I should say this is a youth organization. You're just looking at one of the older folks. Because what they're doing right as we speak here is they're out making banners, they're out making signs. You should see what the stuff they're making for our upcoming things in October and beyond. They're all doing that, so they sent me for this thing. But I am by no means representative of the demographics of our group. We have so many youth. We have so many people of color.
We have to change our comfort zone thinking paradigm. Henry David Thoreau, that great American poet, nature observer, who built a little cabin at Walden Pond, he refused to sign up for the draft for the Mexican War. So they arrested him and they put him in jail. And in the morning, he's had a little breakfast, and he's a local guy, so they give him a nice breakfast, and nobody's like, yeah, he's going to get out of this fine. And his friend, Mr. Alcott, also another famous early American, walking by, and he happens to look up in the window and sees Henry. He says, Henry, what are you doing in jail? It's Mr. Alcott, what are you doing out of jail? We need to change the way we think. I thought that the American war in Vietnam was a good thing when I volunteered to go. I volunteered my life for America. I thought America, I trusted my leaders. I would put my life on the line for my country. So someone says, you get arrested a lot. I said, yeah, I do. Because I have really strong feelings about certain things. I'm not saying you have to go out and get arrested, but you have to do something. Because this climate thing is not a joke. It is accelerating, and they're constantly changing the models and speeding up the end game point.
Hiding the truth.
Even if we do everything that we possibly can do, you're still going to see the damage increase for a decade or 2 decades before, like the problem with the ozone and the chlorofluorocarbons, we stop putting this stuff up in the air and let nature heal itself. Nature has a remarkable ability to heal itself, but you got to give it a break, and we're not doing that. Instead, we're just shoving more down Mother Nature's throat. And It's like one of my feminist friends put it. She said, God is coming, and is she ever pissed? So.
Yep. So we have been ignoring that. We've continued business as usual.
Yeah.
Because
My
business as
Native
usual.
American friends, you people don't see. You have eyes, but you don't see.
Yeah, yeah. So since 1990, our emissions on this planet have gone up 60%. Since 1990, and that's when we first started having the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change from the UN saying that we are hurting the planet with our emissions. So for 30 years, we've just continued business as usual. Because business as usual is very profitable for a relatively small number of people.
Who want a house with 20 bedrooms
Sure.
and their own airplane to get to and from it.
So what we've determined with Extinction Rebellion is that we cannot sway the population. We cannot make change by just throwing information out there. I just said that number about the emissions. We can't just throw numbers out there, and we can't just have nice conversations. It's not working. For the past 30 years, that model has failed us. And we're at the point now where we're at the precipice. So Extinction Rebellion says, okay, so we're going to turn to disruption.
How are we going to learn? Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to be able to convince the elites, if you want to put it that way, the institutions that are profiting from this fossil fuel economy, we're not going to be able to convince them unless we start to make it hurt. So we're going to try to make it hurt. We're going to disrupt business as usual. We're going to do it, very importantly, non-violently. There is no, that's kind of the bottom line for Extinction Rebellion is this is a non-violent movement.
Non-negotiable goal.
And exactly, we have 4 demands that are pretty stringent. I see you got them there.
I got them printed out. Yeah.
And I could synthesize them. They're kind of long.
Go ahead.
The first demand is to tell the truth, and I think you just mentioned something about that. We need to tell the truth, not just us, not here, but the media is important. But the government needs to start telling the truth.
Everybody does.
Everybody does,
Industry does.
But the government's the one that can really push it to a mass audience.
Some of the oil
quickly.
companies knew about this 20 years ago, and they never said a word to anybody.
ExxonMobil did a report in 1985
Yep.
to their bosses, I guess, that showed, if you had a graph, it showed exactly where we would be at the emissions rate that we have, where we would be temperature-wise, how many, what our parts per million are going to be with CO2. They had it down perfectly. That was
Really?
35 years ago.
Even the exaggerated.
ExxonMobil, you can Google it. You can see ExxonMobil climate, chart, prediction chart. They told their bosses there at ExxonMobil, look at what we discovered. This thing that we're doing, that we're putting out all these emissions. This is what's going to happen. So what did the chairman of ExxonMobil do? He went up on camera in front of the whole nation, right? He did that, right, and said, look, we're emitting all this stuff. It's going to kill the planet. We have to stop. No, of course he didn't do that. He didn't do that. He should have done that.
Oh, gee.
And then James Hansen, a couple of years later, went to the Senate. He sat at the U.S. Capitol and told Senate panel that the same exact thing, that if we continue the emissions that we're going at right now, we're going to be in deep very soon.
James Hampton?
James Hansen.
Hansen.
Hansen, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, he was the head of NASA's climate division. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't say that. So, Professor James Hansen.
Yeah.
And of course, what happened, did Congress declare a climate emergency and change everything that we're doing? Absolutely not. So that's what we've been working with 30, 40 years of inaction, in fact, going the opposite direction. And so obviously, throwing the information out there, trying to have nice conversations with those institutions isn't working. And we are at a point now where we're really in danger, and we cannot continue that model anymore. So that's what Extinction Rebellion is. We're going to get out on the streets. We're going to make some noise, non-violently.
How?
And that's a lot of what ended the Vietnam War, was when we had like May Day. We had hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. We were burning old cars that barely got there on the bridges. This one guy, I talked with him for a while. He'd been a bus driver. So what was he doing? He knew exactly how to throw up the back thing of the bus. He knew exactly where to cut it, and that bus stopped. And he was just running all over D.C., shutting down every bus he could just stop for a light. He'd just wait for the light and go get it.
Nice.
And interesting things, too. I was sent to DuPont Circle. They brought in the Army. DuPont Circle is one of the main choke points in D.C. And I was the one delegated to go down and talk to those guys. And so I'm down there talking to those guys. They were not antagonistic to the demonstrators. A number of them said, we'd really rather be out there with you guys. He says, this war, they're sending us to Washington, D.C., so we're supposed to protect citizens, not shoot them. Talked to these two guys that had an M60 machine gun, a big machine gun. It had just cut down a whole row of people like nothing. And I said, so, they tell you to fire. What are you going to do? The guy looked at me and says, well, they tell us to fire. That's an order. We're going to fire this thing. You see that son of a bitch over there? Not the lieutenant. He's clueless and scared to death. The captain. He says, that's what we're going to shoot. We're going to shoot their captain. And I said, well, hopefully it won't come to that. And the guy says, well, right now, I already did one tour. They want to send me back for another tour. I'd just as soon shoot the son of a bitch. I'm like, you know.
And why?
People think, look, the military and the police protect and serve. Who do they protect and serve? The people with money, the people with power, the people with nice houses. The Genovese case in New York City, where this woman was raped and stabbed, and there over a period of an hour and a half, something, and people called the police, they never came. It sounded a little brutal. They went for donuts and coffee instead. It ended up in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court issued a ruling, it stands to this day. The police are under no obligation to help any specific individual, only to serve for the purpose of the general good. In other words, the police can be standing right there, somebody can beat you to death. They are not obligated to intervene, period. You have no protection. But I'll tell you what, and you go to a demonstration, you might get your head pounded in. You might also get arrested by someone like this Hispanic woman in New York, one of the last times I got arrested. Sir, I need you to go stand over there. And look over there. There's nothing over there. She said, I need you to go stand over. That's police order. And I said, well, I'm here with the others to get arrested. And she says, I don't want to arrest you. I've been to Iraq. I've been to Afghanistan. I don't want to arrest you, my brother. And I said, you got a family? She says, yes. I said, you got to arrest me and protect your job. When the time comes, you'll know which side to be on. See, a lot of us here do. And we're pissed off that we've been pulled out on you guys. And I stood before this judge. I was delegated to be the fancy mouth, to be the first case.
Yeah.
And the judge, he says, so, tell me a little bit about yourself and your story and why you did this. And I did. He got up, and he got up, and he got up. He was 6'8", 9", big guy, strong guy. And he looked me right in the eye and he says, son, I was a brigade commander in Vietnam. I know why you're here. And then he clicked his heels together. He saluted me and says, I salute your respect and love for America and your patriotism. You're not the people that should be in front of me today. And he's dismissed. Next case. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I'm not actually a veteran. But you came to support these veterans? Yes. Good for you. Case dismissed.
Wow.
He commanded soldiers in Vietnam.
Sure.
His people died, and he had to write their parents. They always have to write the parents. The guy's got a different judge, more of the same arrest. They got big fines. They got all sorts of community service. And Bill Perry, he's just no fear guy. He went through the Battle of Hawaii and all this stuff. And he says, "What do you mean community service? What do you think I got arrested for?" That's my community service.
Yeah.
He says, "You be careful, you'll go to jail." He says, "I just came out of jail."
And I think you make a good point that applies to Extinction Rebellion as well, and that
You can't just have people, I mean, I'm on Facebook and the media a lot. Facebook is not being on the revolution. It's not making changes.
that's right.
I went on Facebook to find and share and get other people's information to learn. I didn't go on there to make namby-pamby friends
Yeah,
or to
absolutely.
pretend that I was doing some kind of revolutionary work. Revolutionary work is this show, getting arrested, going to everybody's demonstrations, and that's kind of what it comes down to. You can't just be inside some little box. You have got to get out there and shake feathers, and ultimately you have to put fear in the people that run this show. Because fear and power are the only things that they understand. And when people get angry enough, and when people shut down enough bridges and sidewalks and streets, and ultimately start going way beyond that, those people are going to pack up, cash in, and get the hell out. Well, they're still able to.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, when a society collapses, and I've studied the collapse of a number of societies in detail, great detail, talking to people who were there, part of it. And it's not pretty what happens when a society falls apart and there is no authority.
No. Who's listening?
And one of the things we tell people in the vets is make friends with the police, make friends with the military. They're not your enemy unless you make them your enemy.
They're certainly not the
They
people
know
who
they're
are
hired.
profiting.
They know they're hired guns. When it's no longer in their interest to be hired guns, then there's a choice. They can still get their bread money for however long that lasts and be hated for it because tempers exacerbate, or they can come over and be on your side and get the SOBs.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And that's a key message from our organization as well. Is
we don't
We're-
want violence, but we're not going to sit on our ass and watch this planet die.
we're aiming our frustration at the powers that be, the ones who are profiting from business as usual. We know that that there are lots of folks who are on the fence. There are lots of folks who are trying to maintain that the status quo. And
Ignorance is bliss. I don't want to know.
that's right. But we think that it's very important for us to get across the point that when we do actions here in Vermont and everywhere around the globe, and it's going to inconvenience some regular people, it's just going to happen. It's an emergency. It's going to happen. We're not trying to make life worse for those people. We are trying to get the word out that this is an emergency, and we have to start thinking about in emergency mode. And that applies to anyone who's sitting in their car waiting for us to leave an intersection, or for the police who are there, who are actually watching out for us to make sure that we don't get run over by a car or anything like that. We're all in this together. We're trying to make it so that there's more of us.
City. I don't want to arrest you. I was in the wars, both
Right.
wars, Afghanistan, Iraq. He said, I'm on your side. I said, I don't want to arrest you. He said, a lot of people here feel the same way. He says, yeah, we get some assholes here. Just every group has assholes. I'm on TV. But the point of it, about 8 months ago, there was a survey done of scientists who were involved in one way or the other with weather, global phenomena, keeping track of this, that, and the other. 97% of them said global warming is real and it's happening faster than our models anticipate. That means 3% of them, a number of whom are making a lot of money by fake science. Here you go, Trump. Fake science showing it's not true.
Sure.
And Trump, Mr. Bone-spirited, I didn't see him in Vietnam. Could have used his help when I was getting myself shot at. Mr. Trump, oh, that's fake science. I mean, okay. It's not fake science. It's doomsday alarm.
Right there.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to inconvenience people, and we're going to have to do whatever it takes and go as far as we have to go to make this go away. We don't have a choice.
If we can.
Yeah, and making
We
it.
don't have a choice.
We're in a position where we're going to be hurt no matter what.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emissions in the system that are going to continue the warming no matter what we do. Whether we turn off all the cars and power plants and all that stuff right now, warming is going to continue. In fact, carbon dioxide does not actually start to warm for 10 years after it has been emitted. So all of the emissions that we've put out into the planet from 2009 to now, we haven't felt the effects of that yet. So we will be feeling the effects of that in 10 years. Between 2009 and 2019, we put out the most emissions we have ever put out in any 10-year span. So we haven't felt. We put out 22% of all human emissions that we've ever put out since day one in the last 10 years. We haven't felt that
Every
yet.
year for the last 5 or 6 years has been the hottest year on record.
Yeah.
Every year.
Coincidence? I don't think
Yeah.
so. Yeah. So it continues. We're going to start feeling more and more of this warming. It's going to continue to spike. Meanwhile, our emissions continue to go up. Last year, 2.7% they went up to another all-time high. So to get us to start going down, and I forgot that we kind of hit the first demand and not anymore. The second demand that we have is to bring emissions down to net zero by 2025. 5 years. Very, very, very bold.
Very aggressive.
It's very possible, I think. From what I can tell from literature, it sounds like it's possible, but it's going to take a vast change in the way that we do things, and that's going to be that's the hard part.
In the way that we decide to do things, or
It
who
may not be
decides.
possible in a state as rural as Vermont, but for the urban areas, for a lot of areas, I mean San Francisco, LA, New York, I'm sorry, you build a great big parking ring around the city. From there on in, you leave your vehicle and it's going to be solar powered, electric, off batteries, whatever. And you're going to need your bullet trains and this, and they're going to, I mean, you want to get people employed. We've got to totally rebuild our whole infrastructure to work off renewable energy, which isn't just the solar. It's wind power, water power, wave power. If they built the pyramids and other impossible things. The Bay of Fundy up in Canada. If they close that off, they put turbines in the dam. So those turbines generate when water comes in, they generate when water goes out. That would power most of North America. Just that one project. Yeah, it's going to be expensive. It's going to take a long time.
Somebody's
But what's
money.
the alternative, right? If we do
That's
not
the-
do that, how
what's
expensive
the
is it going to be?
alternative?
It's going to be really expensive in dollars, but it's also going to be expensive in suffering. And if we don't start making these changes, drastic changes, not just incremental drip, drip, drip stuff, we don't have the time for that anymore. We have to do more bold things and not be worried about how we're going to pay for it. Well, how much is what kind of price tag do you have on the survival of our species? Does it really matter how much it costs if it means we'd be able to survive? I think that's the point where we're at now. A lot of times we've talked about in Extinction Rebellion, and I know other groups do this too, we need some sort of World War II type push, how the transformation of society happened during that time to fund the war. We need that again, but on a global scale. It's even bigger than that, but that's the kind of, the mindset change that happened especially in this country where we went to victory farms and rationing and all that. We can do that kind of stuff. We've done it before, but we have to do it again, and probably even more on a longer term basis.
One thing nobody talks about it anymore: population control. When you think about it, if you get branded one way or the other, tattoo, I don't care. But, and boy, this is pure, Nazi type fascism coming out of me. Well, there are some areas where I am an ultra conservative. Not very many, because unrepentant old new left, I prefer that. However, how about a deal? Let's make a deal. Each person in this life gets to contribute to the creation of 2 new people. So you better pick the right partner the first time, because after you have that second kid, you're getting fixed. No more kids for you. Well, think about it. Well, that just keeps the population where it is. No, actually it doesn't. It decreases the population, because not all children will choose to reproduce. Not all children who do choose to reproduce will physically be successful and able to reproduce. Those who successfully reproduce, some of those children will die before they get a chance to reproduce from disease or accident and so on. So it actually represents a manageable ongoing decrease in population. Now, I'm not going to get pretentious and say that I have a PhD in economics, but I'm going to give you Dave's rule of wealth. People into resources equals wealth. You've only got so much resources, and right now it's diminishing.
Yeah.
And you got so many people that need to draw from those resources. We're gobbling this planet up in every way possible.
Yep.
We need a lot less people. Not by war, not by volunteerism.
Yeah.
You get to participate in the creation of 2 kids and you get sterilized, and that's it. And this is everybody worldwide. You can get that population down. You overbreed any population, what do you get? Pandemics, epidemics, wars.
Bacteria, mosquitoes,
whatever it takes to put
anything.
that food in your family's mouth and put that roof over their head. Whatever that takes, you get desperate enough, you'll do it. Yep. So where would we be if we only had, if we got down to where the world, say, had 30% of the people it does right now? Would the quality of life be less? Would self-fulfillment be less? Just choose who you breed with great care, because that's it. Or you can have one with this one and keep the other one on hold for somebody else later, if whatever. But we don't deal with population. We're going to, you look at places like Yemen. Kids are starving over there. Kids are starving. It's not only because of the war, but Yemen's got a famine.
I'll say Extinction Rebellion doesn't really talk about population too much.
I threw that in because nobody does. Nobody talks about
right. We're hoping that we can find solutions as a democratic society on a variety of levels.
Nobody's going to buy my lunatic ideas.
Oh, wait a minute. As a democratic society, your third demand says...
We do not trust that our government is going to get us going in the direction we need to go. Obviously, they're not doing it very well. So we want to have a people's assembly set up in such a way that we're able to find what all the information is and get out there and make decisions based on the information as a democratic society. I'm trying to do this really fast, but having people, ordinary people from around the country, from around the state, do the processing of the information and making sure that the information make good decisions on that information. Give it to our legislators and say, this is what we're going to do, and it's their job to figure out how to implement it. This works in places like Ireland with the abortion issue, and the UK has the facility for it as well, and that's what we're trying to do here. And then our fourth demand is we want this transition to be a clean one that takes, not just a clean one, but one that takes everybody into account, a just transition, especially for the folks who have been kind of steamrolled by our rush to fossil fuel dominion over the years.
We're down to about our last half minute.
Yep.
Go ahead and tell people again how they can join the upcoming action.
Okay, our website is xrvt.us. And we have a webpage on there about it, but we're having an encampment on the State House lawn on October 17th through 19th, youth-led, and we're going to take over the State House lawn. We're not asking for permits, we're going to do it, and that's going to be our way of kind of taking it to the State House in October, and we're going to be there in January and beyond, and it's going to be loud and noisy. How's that?
Okay, I guess that pretty much wraps it up, and we'll leave that as the final thought. Thanks for viewing, and we'll see you again next time. Have a great weekend, what's left of it. Bye.
Gotta have you back, Dan.
Yeah, I could just keep going.
Well, me
I feel
too.
like I go off on a rant and forget what, like we were talking about the demands there, and I hit the first one and then forgot we still had 3 more to go.
Oh, that's all right. We didn't get the number 4.
Yeah, that's right.